feeling the heat of the flames against her outstretched arm, the lightning pricking her skin. "You're not a monster. You're Naruto, our friend, brother, and mentor." Natsumi stepped forward, showing the cake to her older brother. It was a Western recipe she'd found buried. Was it called mud cake? The name seemed strange to her, but when she mixed everything together, she understood where it came from. "Naruto and I don't want you to be a stranger anymore. I want you to be the older brother you were meant to be, to help me become a ninja, and to talk to me when I'm lonely. I want you to be my Oni-san." With a radiant smile, he trudged through the heat. Naruto's expression softened as he walked. He stopped when the others joined him. "Heh, we need you back, Oni-chan. The village is so boring without you. Besides, who's going to teach me how to be a super badass jounin if not you?" His pointy little sister spoke, making his eyes weaken. Her long purple hair fluttered behind her as she stopped. "Without you, Naruto-sama, who will keep the recruits in line when they make mistakes? Better yet, who will stop all the bar fights with just a look?" Try as she might, the words she wanted to say wouldn't come out. Her posture relaxed, her shoulders rounding forward as she took a light step. Her lips, warm to his touch, pressed against his. A hand cupped his cheek. The heat slowly faded, and he opened his eyes, meeting the crimson gaze. "I want to get to know you better, Naruto-kun. I know you're a good person. You just need to start showing us the person you want to be seen." She offered him a genuine smile as the flames returned to her black hair. The lightning no longer burned her skin. Her heavy hand rose nervously and encircled her agile figure. Thank you, Kurenai. Thank you all. I won't let you down." Glancing at the girls, she noticed the cake in Natsumi's hands. "Natsumi, is that a mud cake?" The blonde's eyes widened at recognizing it so quickly. "Don't be surprised, Natsumi-chan. Naruto-sama carried out several missions in the West and became famous there. That's where he acquired his taste for sweets, right, Ripper Jack?" He raised his eyebrows. It wasn't one of his best works. "Do you mean Jack the Ripper?" asked the man in the trench coat. "Hey, that was me. My boss was a real pain, but a job's a job. It would be a disgrace to the town if I didn't do it." He lowered his head slightly and felt his arms tighten, as if something were pressing on his chest. How did we go from talking about cake to working? He could feel the vibrations her words sent through his chest. It was strange. She was so close now, but he didn't feel the need to suppress it. "Ninjans, all you do is work." Naruto let a smile spread across his lips. "Let's forget about this. There's cake." That was the commander she knew and adored. "Happy birthday, Naruto and I." The raven-haired man looked at her with a raised eyebrow, while the others gasped, unaware that this day was today. "Well, I guess so. Thank you, Natsumi." She closed her eyes and smiled broadly. The blonde, excited, took a candle from one of the many candlesticks on the wall. It was a surprise that they hadn't been damaged. She held it over the cake and smiled at her older brother when he looked at her, confused. "You were supposed to blow it out and make a wish, idiot." The fact that he had to tell her what it was for made the others frown. Kurenai pulled away from his arms and stepped aside as Naruto walked forward and blew out the candle. I wish to be seen as a human being." The days passed quickly for the group. Naruto had been overseeing Anko and Kurenai's training, while also giving Sasuke smaller exercises to help him develop into a better person. That didn't matter anymore. He was in the middle of a large room, standing behind a bench, and not far to his left was Kushina, in the same position as him. "I suppose you've already made a decision, Naruto-san?" Hyuga Hayashi, leader of the Hyuga clan, was a real pain when you didn't like him. Unfortunately for most of those present, Naruto had been his personal guard for a while. Inazuka Tsum, primitive, was the only way Naruto could describe her. She had a tendency to act on her most basic instincts, something that also got her into a lot of trouble. Shinobi needed to keep a clear head at all times. Nara Shikaku, lazy genius. That was all that needed to be said about him. His friends, Yamanaka and Noichi, the IT chief, an incredibly shrewd man when necessary, and Akimichi Choza, the human tank, each had an air of Natsumi's caliber. He was interested to see what the new generation of Inoshikacho would be capable of. The Uzumaki clan leader was by his side. She needed no explanation, nor did the Senju leader, a certain Senju Tsunade. Sarutobi Asuma trembled in his seat. observing the powerful figures present. He felt out of place. Most would think he was too young to assume command. It was ironic that they thought so while trying to pressure Naruto into taking the coveted Uchiha position. The Aburame clan, led by Shibi, had met Naruto a couple of times. They felt like equals, neither admiring nor enmity towards one another. His father held two positions. He was head of the Namikaze clan and Hokage. His vote counted twice. Civilians were excluded from the meeting. It would be too problematic to involve them if a certain clan head were questioned. The elders, Mitokado Hamura, Udatane Koharu, and Shimura Danzo. The first two didn't get along well with the raven-haired Uchiha. Danzo, on the other hand, always seemed to smile when Naruto was around. I have honorable members of the council. I won't ask for anything lengthy. I just want to show you what you did to me by asking me to look at my memories. The council blinked at her response. You can be much tougher, Naruto-san. You understand that, right? He tilted his head to one side. What a pain sometimes, always wanting to go all out. Yes, I know. I could always steal my sister's mother, but I won't. It's a pain I wouldn't wish on her. Besides, my head isn't a pretty place. Yamanaka and Noichi can vouch for that. Naruto gestured to the blonde man, who swallowed hard. It's true, all ANBU must undergo quarterly scans to assess their fitness for service. Eventually, we stopped using this method with the enforcers. Naruto broke them down repeatedly until they became what their name suggests. But, as we can see, they can still move around and live their daily lives outside of the ANBU. I lost several clan members to the asylums due because of those scans, but we never had to resort to an enforcer. The blonde man sat down and nodded. He almost felt sorry for Kushina. He had seen some of the things Naruto had done. Afterward, he went to his breakfast. Minato clasped his hands in front of his face, looking at his wife and son, who remained motionless as they waited. Do you have something to say, Uzumaki Kushina? The redhead took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment. She opened them slowly and looked around. I did what I had to do to protect my daughter and my husband. Wouldn't you do the same in my place? The clan leaders frowned, and Tsunade's fingers tightened against the edge of the desk, nearly breaking it. Seeing that none of the clan leaders responded, she lowered her head. You have to stop living in the past, Kushina, or we'll continue this cycle of hatred. Our two clans are now in ruins, and yet you still wish to keep fighting. I see no reason for it. My vision has always been clouded by darkness, so I learned to close my eyes, to listen instead of see. In a way, you made me who I am today. His voice was calm as he moved to stand before her, looking at her father and receiving the necessary nod to continue. This is what you caused. She closed her eyes, pushing the hair away from her left eye, revealing her now pale skin and a black shuriken spinning against a red background. Tsukuyami. A red moon, its light reflecting across the sky, cast an eerie, hazy glow. Looking around, she noticed her body was bound to a cross. Standing before her was Naruto, a katana in hand. He took a step forward, and she struggled to free herself. Excuse me, this is the default setting for this jutsu. It's primarily used for torture. I mainly use it to transfer vast amounts of information in seconds. Shall I let you cut me? She looked at him with narrowed eyes, struggling a little longer. It seemed she would have to let him go. Those restraints wouldn't budge. With a small movement of her wrists, she let herself fall onto his outstretched arm, quickly pulling away in disgust. Naruto frowned. It seemed her hatred ran much deeper than he had thought. Can we end this? I don't want to be any closer to you than necessary. The katana vanished from her hands, and she brushed a strand of hair away from her left eye. Here, I will show you the various events your seal has triggered. For the next 4 days, you will travel with me, entering and exiting each event. You will have time to become accustomed to me. A few moments passed outside, and Naruto took a step back, wiping the wound on his eye. He slowly stood up and let out a sigh. It seemed that was all he needed to do when Kushina collapsed to the ground, trembling. Now you know what you've done. Gomen, 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 he repeated on the ground. It seemed to have become a kind of mantra, as he was still repeating it minutes later when Naruto and the Kyuubi finished repairing the damage caused by the jutsu. Naruto shook his head, looking at his stepmother. It wasn't that bad. Besides, you should apologize to them, not me. The council stared at him for a few moments, and he shrugged. She experienced the pain I felt fighting the seal, along with the memories, seeing their sleeping faces as I struggled not to hurt them. Kushina, stop, stand up. You're the leader of a clan. Your punishment has already been inflicted. Once you apologize, I'll forgive you, but right now you're being pathetic. Don't set a bad example for Natsumi. Be strong. Naruto stepped forward and lifted her by the back of her kimono, raising her up and gently setting her down, leaving his hands there to catch her if she fell again. Why yes, Naruto. His words faltered as he tried to catch his breath. The council seemed surprised by how quickly he changed his opinion of the boy in front of them. She spent 4 days going through some of the things her seal did to me. I had to help her carry things after the second day. It's quite natural that some kind of bond would form. 4 days alone with someone while revisiting their memories, they could understand the connection you felt. Do you need me for anything else? Or may I leave? The council wished her well, headed for the door, and stopped when they heard Kushina's voice. Naruto, I'm really sorry. I thought it was for the best. He raised an eyebrow and turned to look at her. Like I said, Kushina, don't apologize to me. It's the others who need it. The door opened and closed in a single motion, and Naruto disappeared with it. Tsunade cleared her throat and looked at the other council members. You know that if it had been anyone other than Naruto, they would have demanded your head, right? Kushina nodded at the Senju's words. Since you know he has more heart than most, it saddens me that people only see him as a weapon. Minato nodded as he observed the council. He's requested a few months' vacation after the Jounin exams. Does anyone see a problem with this? Some members stood up. Won't he take the team with Uchiha Sasuke? Minato swallowed, while rising in his throat. It was an argument he had had countless times with his son. He's made it clear. He won't be taking a position on the council or joining any team. He stated that he'll help train any Genin team if he's available. There were a few murmurs in the council before they nodded silently. We don't see any problem. Have you given any reason? He says he wants to finish part of his training in Ironland. Too slow, Naruto repeated, dodging Kurenai and Anko's blows. With his katana still sheathed, he struck them in the back of their legs, sending them to the ground. His eyes were closed, his weight resting on the blade. I only move at the speed of a Jounin, and besides, I'm fighting blind. You need to move faster and take the emotion out of your attacks. They both struggled to their feet, swaying slightly. Hi Naruto-kun/Oni-chan. He frowned at Anko, which made her laugh. Gaki, I can't wait to hit you again, he muttered, propelling himself backward. He gripped his sheathed sword upside down. Come on, you only need to land one blow. He gave a small bow, listening to the sound of his feet, leaping swiftly backward and dispelling the Jinjutsu. He frowned at the scent of poison, turning his head toward its source and hearing a hiss. Using your snakes so soon, Anko? You should have kept them hidden from your opponent until you couldn't afford to use them anymore. With a grace only heard in fairy tales, she struck each snake that emerged from her sleeves on the top of its head, making them hiss and scatter. She stepped back a few inches as the kunai hit the ground where it had been standing. Kurenai, you should have anticipated the move and prepared a second trap. She heard the sound of metal slicing through the air and smiled. I stand corrected, though the delay was a bit too long. She drew her sword from its sheath and sliced the kunai aimed at her back, causing the girls to gasp as they were cut in half. The resounding click told them she was back where she belonged and already in her reverse grip. The air around him grew warmer, and he knew it wasn't him. Katan. Camp wall. His flames quickly consumed those directed toward him. He could hear his students' ragged breaths and smiled. You're doing well, keep it up. It wasn't mockery. He was sincere with them. It was something they had learned to distinguish themselves by. Anko took a deep breath and steadied herself, raising a kunai to her chest and lowering it to her side. I've resisted enough. Her exclamation made Naruto bow and gesture to her, saying, let's go. Anko lunged at Kurenai, who was moving behind her, chaining together signals. Naruto sensed the intrusion of the other chakra and quickly purged it, remaining motionless, making her believe he had succeeded. Anko smiled smugly as she closed the distance with Naruto. Her face blurred before her eyes, and she felt a dull ache in the back of her leg, pulling her to the ground. Kurenai tensed as Naruto appeared before her, katana at his side, advancing with his eyes still closed. He stopped less than 2 centimeters from her mouth, and a small blow struck the side of her leg. Too slow, Kurenai. The soft sound of his tongue as he spoke her name sent a shiver down her spine. The mint and chocolate scent lingered on his breath. Belladonna. Everything about him brought back that thought. A quick turn of her feet, and she was back in the center of the clearing. That's enough for today. I have an appointment. Her crimson eyes slowly opened, taking in the nervous expression on the Jinjutsu user's face. Are you all right, Kurenai? Although the concern in her voice was touching, she couldn't find the words to reply, nodding silently. See you later tonight? She stiffened and looked at him nervously. Actually, the repairs are already done. I'm moving back into my house tonight. He raised an eyebrow and looked at her questioningly. That's understandable. I'll be moving too. The Uchiha mansion needs maintenance, and besides, the village is pressuring me to claim it as my own. He grunted. The house in the Forest of Death will become part of the training grounds. Kurenai felt a chill run down her spine. It was a terrifying thought, turning that area into part of the training grounds. I'll see you when I see you then. You'll know where to find me. Tai Long emerged from a strange portal beside Naruto, nodding his head before they both vanished in a cloud of black flames. No matter how many times I see it, it's still amazing. Kurenai could only agree with her purple-haired friend. What are we doing here, Naruto-san? Sasuke asked reasonably, as they both stepped through large metal doors that creaked under their own weight. They were greeted by a group of ANBU, who quickly led them through the main corridors. Sasuke felt his life ebbing away as they walked through the area. I'm getting rid of something that could kill you on the field. The smaller Uchiha raised an eyebrow and looked at Naruto. Naruto didn't even stop, continuing onward. They walked in relative silence, broken only by Sasuke's soft footsteps. This continued for a few minutes before Naruto and the ANBU stopped in front of a large metal door, a square of bars about 1.5 meters across, which offered a view into the room. Naruto turned to the small boy and handed him a kunai. It was a little longer than usual, but still felt familiar in Sasuke's inexperienced hands. Come in. Only one of you can leave. Sasuke raised an eyebrow, but nodded anyway, slowly entering the room once it was open. The door slammed shut behind him, and the clanking of chains filled the air. They say if I kill you, I can be free. His voice dry and his figure weak, Sasuke swallowed, steadying himself and turning the kunai over. I will not become a one-way ticket to freedom. He finally understood. He was in a prison, though he didn't understand why. The man moved forward slowly, revealing his scarred body and the stitches across his eye. Remember, the winner goes free. Naruto shouted from behind the door, opening his golden eyes, which allowed him to see Sasuke's chakra movements. In moments like these, his cursed eyes came in very handy. A small fire burned within Sasuke, making Naruto smirk smugly as he watched the Uchiha roll to the side, the sound of chains hitting the ground echoing in the air. Sasuke panicked. Now he understood what he was supposed to do. When the chain hit the ground, it slammed his foot down, showing him just how weak the man in front of him was. Sasuke wasn't a strapping 12-year-old at all. He was thin, so it almost surprised him that the man couldn't pull the chain out from under his feet. The man in front of him wore the same astonished expression. It was thanks to Naruto's training that he recovered first, rolling on the ground again. During the roll, he slid the man's release shackles around his arm and pulled forward, making him lose his balance. 2 cuts appeared, one on his thigh and the other on his calf muscle. The man staggered forward, letting out a roar of pain, his eyes blazing as his senses were clouded by adrenaline. Sweat trickled down the young Uchiha's face. He wasn't physically exhausted, but this brief struggle showed he wasn't ready for a life-or-death situation. He could feel his heart pounding in his ears, irritation burning in his eyes. He didn't dare look away or try to remedy the situation. His entire focus was on his enemy. That's when it happened. The man's dark brown hair seemed to slow to a snail's pace. He saw the man's arm twist for a killing blow. Sasuke's agile body responded, pushing the arm further, causing the man to overextend. With skillful movements, the kunai lodged in the prisoner's ribs. His tattered clothes were stained red as he fell to his knees. I trust an Uchiha to fight my dirty tricks. The man exclaimed as his eyes closed, collapsing forward with a loud crunch. Sasuke stood still, the kunai rolling from his hand and clanging against the cold cobblestone floor. He vaguely recognized that the doors had opened and the man had been dragged out of the room. The first kill is the hardest. I'd say unlocking the first level of the Sharingan wasn't exactly planned, but there was a good chance it would happen. WY. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the sight of the now trembling boy and signaled to the Umbu to leave them alone. You're asking why? Look at you now. Would you be able to fight in your current state? Sasuke shook his head weakly, still in shock from what had happened moments before. Remember what I told you earlier, Naruto said, slurring his words, seeing the faint understanding on the boy's face. I'm getting rid of something that could get you killed in the field, he muttered, looking at his bloody hands. That's why I did it, I killed. It's not easy to take a life. The best thing is to learn to detach yourself from emotions. I won't lie and say it gets easier, but you still feel guilty every time. But you'll have to learn to live like this. Can you imagine killing again, Sasuke? The boy looked at Naruto. From his current position, it seemed as if he were speaking to Kami. Naruto seemed so strong and wise. It was refreshing. Moments like this showed Sasuke that, no matter how strong someone seemed, deep down they were still human. I don't know. Can I have time to think? Naruto nodded and made the kunai on the ground vanish into a pile of ash, indicating that it was part of his special equipment, along with his bow and sword. You have until your graduation exams. Can I continue training you if you want? He received a weak nod in response. I'd rather train than end up in the hospital because of a fight between civilians. Sasuke chuckled at the end of his sentence and calmed down. His head was still a little lower than before, and Naruto, seeing this, placed a hand on his back and gave him a warm smile. The fact that you regret what you did shows you're more of a man than most. How about we get you something to eat and I explain the Sharingan to you in more detail? Naruto's voice had a calming effect on the young Uchiha as he raised his head slightly. Sounds good. Just wait a moment, please. Naruto raised an eyebrow as Sasuke walked away from him, standing in the corner for a moment before familiarizing himself with his lunch. I had the same reaction as you after my first murder. A head of black hair rose from a corner, her hands still firmly pressed against the wall. That makes me feel a little better. I was 5 years old, Naruto mocked, seeing the frown on Sasuke's face. It made it all worthwhile. I take it back. Naruto chuckled as he placed a hand on Sasuke's back and led them back to the Uchiha mansion. They stood amidst the black floors. The stone walls kept the interior cooler than necessary. It was fortunate he had a high affinity for fire to keep his body warm. Is this it? Sasuke's question hung in the air as Naruto moved around the room, a white tiger trailing behind him. Yes, this is the Uchiha mansion, and from tonight on, it's my home too. Let's get you washed up. I don't want you stinking up the restaurant we're going to. A soft knock echoed off the cold walls. Naruto sighed as he headed for the door. Tailong, can you accompany Sasuke to the bathroom? He could have sworn the tiger chuckled softly before nodding for him to follow. Unfortunately, he hadn't even reached the top of the stairs when Naruto opened the door. What is he doing here? Naruto's face remained impassive as he touched his ear. With a lazy glance at Natsumi, she quickly apologized and began to speak in a lower voice. Why is Sasuke here? You're asking why Uchiha Sasuke is at the Uchiha mansion with me. Uchiha Naruto? Do you see a pattern here, Natsumi-chan? The blonde tapped her chin with her finger. Suddenly, it clicked. Naruto would have sworn he heard a sound inside his head. So he's like family, right? Naruto's head swiveled from side to side. More or less. I just finished training him today. We were about to go out to dinner. Do you want to come? She checked her clothes and Naruto's, nodding slightly. Well, let's wait for Sasuke then. It's a very important day for him. He saw the confusion on her face and chuckled. You wouldn't understand. Let's just say he finally opened his eyes today. A towel wrapped around her, another drying her hair. Naruto's training had become even more difficult. A slight blush crept across her face as she recalled the time they'd spent together on the lake's surface, the water dripping onto her bare torso, her muscles tensing with every movement. It was quite disconcerting. She chuckled and tossed the towel she'd used to dry her hair into the laundry basket. She put water on the stove to boil and enjoyed a simple meal. Her long, wavy black hair cascaded down her back. Her crimson eyes surveyed the room. She dropped the towel wrapped around her to the floor and quickly put on her pajamas, using the chakra rope exercise Naruto had taught her to fasten one with the other. Her dinner was simple, pork fried rice. A long sigh escaped her lips as she lay down. As her head touched the pillow, she noticed that something wasn't quite right. Looking around, nothing seemed out of place. Again, the lights went out. It was as if that thought had been spoken aloud. A red glow illuminated the room. She slowly turned her head to look at it before everything went dark. A sigh escaped her body as she slowly opened her eyes. She felt a sharp pain in her back. Looking around, she stiffened and found herself lying on a tree branch 9 meters high, in her pajamas. Only when she tensed did she notice the acute pain in her leg. Looking down, she was surprised to see a kunai sticking out of the branch. Focusing chakra on her back for support, she yanked the kunai out, slashing part of her upper body and leaving her abdomen exposed to the forest breeze. Looking around, he couldn't find any familiar landmarks. With a sigh of pain, he rolled onto his stomach and slowly climbed down the tree. He had no idea where he was, or if he was still in danger. It would be best not to waste any more chakra than he needed. Reaching the base of the tree, Kurenai sighed, looked up, and let out a nervous giggle. "I guess it's good that I don't move around much while I sleep," she said dryly. A faint rustle of a lip echoed in her footsteps as she tried to find her way through the woods. A low growl startled her. The bushes to her right began to rustle, and soon after, a black wolf emerged and growled at her, baring its fangs and leaping forward, dragging its injured leg. Kurenai dodged the first attack, leaving a deep gash across its side. A great howl erupted from the beast, and suddenly she found herself cornered. Looking around, she had no way to escape. Using Naruto's recent teachings, she crouched down and wove the pack's attacks. While threading a long strip of hanging signs with one hand, the other was busy cutting the wolves when they got too close. The pack began to shrink and whimper, letting her know the jutsu had worked. A simple demonic vision technique. She frowned. It was almost too easy. When she looked back at it, she saw it dissipate into smoke. "Damn it," she hissed, limping away into the woods. She was being chased. She felt eyes on the back of her neck, scanning her surroundings. Whoever it was, they could surely hide. She felt a tingle in her neck and, spinning on her feet, swung the kunai downward. "Hey, Kurei-chan, that could have hurt someone," a familiar voice teased as she stepped back from the blade. Her purple hair wasn't styled in its usual pineapple bun. Instead, it fell past her shoulders and was loose. "Anko, you should be more careful. I could have killed you." The snake lady chuckled. The blow barely moved. It seemed to move in slow motion. "I'm starting to wonder if you were actually training with Naruto or just leering at him." The raven-haired beauty had the decency to blush at the accusation. "It was a bit of both. But right now we need to get out of here. Any ideas?" Anko shook her head, twirling a kunai in her hands. She was wearing shorts that barely covered her private parts, more like underwear than anything else. Her considerable bust was hidden by a tight t-shirt that looked like it was about to burst. Kurenai wasn't faring much better, now wearing a makeshift pink top and black shorts that reached mid-thigh. "I don't recognize anything around here. Besides, we're indoors. That sky above us is a rotating roof." Kurenai raised an eyebrow, surprised by the purple woman's statement. A snake slowly emerged from Anko's chest and gently spread over her shoulders. "My summons don't detect heat coming from the sun." Kurenai nodded, frowning slightly. "Am I the only one who doesn't have any summons? And what do you suggest?" Anko had a feigned expression of surprise. "But Kurei-chan, I thought you were the senior chunin here. Shouldn't you know what to do?" the purple-haired girl teased. Kurenai simply shook her head at her friend's teasing. "Naruto put me through something like that once, in the Forest of Death. He made me fight an army of spiders while I was trying to find him." She took a few steps forward, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You're a clever bastard." Kurenai looked at Anko questioningly. "Think about today's date. Doesn't something seem off?" Kurenai mulled over the idea for a while, but in the end, she came up with nothing. Anko chuckled at her clueless friend. "She's hit me with Jinjutsu so many times that I can now sense the block. She uses it to block things in my mind that could hurt me. Since it's the same blocking sensation her jutsu leaves, I'll say this is a kind of exam. More specifically, the Jounin exams. Kurenai gasped in surprise. Anko stopped twirling the kunai and gripped it tighter. Now that we know, he won't hold back, so be prepared, Kurei-chan. Raising an eyebrow, she felt the burning sensation on the back of her neck again, the faint rustling in the bushes behind her. 8 tigers, all the size of Tai Long, with hunger in their eyes. Like I said, the test has become more difficult. Isn't that a bit extreme? The voice belonged to Senju Tsunade, who was watching the screens with some concern. Naruto turned around and raised an eyebrow. If they can't complete these paths, they're not worthy of being jounin in my opinion. Besides, the Yanbi you know this is just a joke compared to what they went through. Looking around, he received firm nods of agreement from the corners. Naruto-senpai is right. Everyone woke up feeling great. I remember my exam. I was woken up by a wolf that ate my broken leg. Besides, they didn't give us any weapons to help us, and we spent a whole week there. Knowing Naruto-senpai, he'll let them out at the end of the day. I wonder who he's put in there with them. The statement elicited confused looks from the other jounin and clan heads in the room. He speaks of my obsession with turning those being examined into prey. He tries to discover who the hunter is. Those present in the room looked at Naruto with interest for a few moments. It's clear who the hunter is. You're just not looking properly. Minato was the first to realize this, quickly dispelling the genjutsu that covered him. Not bad, Nico-chan. Looks like your time with Naruto was worth it. A giggle escaped her. Hello. I learned a lot under your tutelage, and even more so when I followed you closely before these exams. She raised her hand and broke the genjutsu in the room, revealing what the screens were actually showing. Kurenai, Anko, Hana, and many others walking around an empty room. But what about the forest? Kakashi had to stifle the laughter that was shaking his body. It's real, at least in their minds. Naruto's genjutsu is on a completely different level than anything they've ever seen. In fact, I doubt calling it genjutsu does justice to his art. The ability to completely alter other people's memories, to adjust their senses to what he wants them to feel, see, and hear. It's hard to describe, but it's almost as if he takes your life in his hands and turns you into a puppet. Yugao explained simply to those present. The large metal shutter in front of them unfurled, revealing Naruto sitting in the middle of the reconnaissance room, atop a large, thin pillar, legs crossed, eyes closed, hands in a sheep-like position. The genjutsu flickered again on the monitors, offering them an image somewhere between reality and illusion. The jounin hopefuls ran around the room, dodging nothing and punching the air. 12 in total danced to the rhythm of Naruto's instrument of destruction, the voice of Kami. Hayashi's veins bulged around his eyes. He shuddered and closed his eyes as he stared at the central pillar. His chakra output is ridiculous. It's like staring at the sun. Yugao nodded grimly. That pillar is made of his own chakra. He's absorbing it and using it to maintain the genjutsu. By the time he hits the ground, he'll have about an hour left. That, in itself, should be a testament to his power. Some scoffed at the Umbu's words, eliciting a grunt from everyone who knew her. It's a genjutsu, nothing impressive. The pillar in the center of the room lowered by 1 meter. Everyone present turned to look at Sum. The clan heads, the Umbu, and the jounin drew their kunai and moved closer to attack. Do you possess a technique capable of altering the course of so many lives at once? In Azukitsum, all the voices chanted simultaneously, making her tremble instantly, as if everything had just begun and then suddenly stopped. Those still holding their kunai toward the clan's leader chuckled shyly. Whether you like it or not, Inazuka-san, your life is in their hands right now, just like all of ours. Minato's cold voice pierced the room, the thought echoing deeply in his mind. A clan so reliant on taijutsu could never truly understand art, even when it's displayed before their eyes. No offense, Hyuga, but I know you're more perceptive than most, even if your clan is filled with prudent, critical demons who aren't worth the time it takes to bring them into the world. Tai Long, Naruto's ever-present companion, spoke from his position on the ground. It's good to see you again, Tai, Yugao said from her seat, turning around to face the white tiger. When did you arrive? when they caught you with that unimpressive jinjutsu. He turned his head toward Sum for a moment. A sneer escaped his throat. The truth is, I didn't have anything better to do today, so I came here, thinking I'd chat with Nico for a while, maybe with the blonde and all that. But instead, I got stuck with the insufferable ramblings of a hound keeper. What a lovely day so far. The great tiger rested his head on his paws, unfazed by what was happening around him. His back was pressed against a tree, his brown eyes fixed on the red one in front of him. Shoo, they'll hear us. The muffled voice was a man's. His jet black hair was spread out all over his body, and he wore sweatpants and bandages around his waist. His eyes slowly turned gold, the pattern of a shuriken appearing in them. His rough hand covered her mouth, pressing against her, pinning them against the tree. You won't scream if I let go, will you? She nodded, her eyes wide, leaning on his hand. He slowly pulled away, letting his hand fall to his side. My name is Inuzuka Hana. I've heard a lot about you. It's an honor to meet you, Uchiha Naruto. He raised an eyebrow and looked at the girl. There's no honor in meeting me. I suppose you were kidnapped too? The girl nodded hesitantly. We should try to get out of this forest. I don't see any good in staying here. It was then that Hana noticed she was barely wearing what could be considered clothes. Her pajamas were very similar to Anko's. It was then that Naruto wondered, do all kunoichi dress this poorly for sleep? How are your combat skills, Hana? His voice remained silent the entire time as his eyes scanned the landscape. Flashing between gold and red, he searched for something that stood out. Like all Inuzuka, I'm a good tracker. My taijutsu is said to be at a low jonin level, and I have decent medical skills, mainly focused on animals, but I can heal the occasional broken bone. In other words, I prefer close-quarters combat. Naruto nodded and reached behind his back, drawing a long black katana. Do you know how to use a sword? He asked, raising an eyebrow, and the girl nodded. She drew a tanto from a seal on her back and handed it to the chunin. She took it, murmuring a small thank you before pulling up her blouse, keeping her cufflinks in place. How come you still have weapons? The thought took much longer than it should have to form in her mind. Naruto beckoned to her and pointed to his katana. The blade disappeared and reappeared in his hand as if nothing had happened. Seals and chakra manipulation. Without the proper knowledge, seals can pass through many detection methods, making them the best way to conceal weapons. She nodded slightly, trusting his word. After all, he was the ANBU commander. Stepping forward, she placed a hand on her bare chest. Her bright red nails stood out against her tanned skin. Will you help me get out of here, Naruto-san? The innocence in her eyes made Naruto's Jinjutsu blush. Perhaps it was the reaction she was looking for, but Naruto didn't want to give it away. I'll do my best, Hana-san. I doubt we'll be here for long. A warm smile spread across his face as he placed a hand on her head. Sum, who had been watching the cameras, narrowed her eyes, and a soft voice slowly entered the room. This Jinjutsu only works on what they want or desire. I only have the ability to manipulate it slightly. Don't accuse me of something I didn't do. Yugao shook her head from her seat, while Tai Long seemed to be doing what he did best, lying down, ignoring everyone, trying to sleep. Naruto, you're going to scare them if you keep doing that. His voice seemed to bounce off the walls for a few moments before disappearing completely. I demonstrated to you before that you're inside my Jinjutsu. I can hear your thoughts, your voice, and even the impulses your muscles send to your brain. Is it really so surprising that I can project my voice in the room where you reside? Gentle and inquisitive, it was strange to think that they were so vulnerable to this man at that moment. Anko let out a small sigh of pain, clutching her right shoulder. It wasn't long ago that she'd had to draw her knife, for ever since, wolves had been chasing her, nipping at her heels. Now she sat in a tall tree, watching the predators around her. Her snakes had proven practically useless in this forest. She had considered using her fire jutsu, but it would give away her position, and besides, she didn't know how long she could stay trapped there. Looking around from her vantage point, she couldn't see the end of the strange forest. A black shape pushed her against the tree, covering her mouth with a hand. Anko-chan, were you caught too? Her low voice seemed to deliver the necessary message to the purple one. The hand slowly moved away as Kurenai leaned against the large branch, blowing her hair out of her eyes. Yeah, I guess so. I woke up on the floor, surrounded by a pack of wolves. Probably one of my 10 worst ways to start the day. She giggled at her own joke. Karina looked at her friend with a raised eyebrow for a moment. I really don't want to know what the worst way you've started your day is, do you? Not at all. Anko's smile was radiant, but suddenly her demeanor changed completely. With a swift movement, she plunged the kunai into Kurenai. Almost Naruto. It seems I know Kurenai better than you think. She smiled proudly, gazing up at the sky. The pressure on her ankles paralyzed her. Her red-eyed friend stared at her with tears in her eyes. Why, Anko? The purple girl asked, laughing to herself. It won't work, Naruto. I know how Genjutsu works, she roared. The sound of someone landing in the tree made her spin around. Why would I waste chakra if I don't even know where I am? Anko looked down at her bloodied hands, her gaze slowly shifting to where Kurenai lay, her chest wound exposed. What the hell happened? Realizing the situation, Naruto knelt beside Kurenai and tried to heal her wound. Anko crawled away from the two, staring in shock at the fallen body as Naruto tried to repair the damage. He slowly shook his head as he looked at Anko, his hands still glowing green and pouring chakra into the dying body. Anko, I can keep her alive, but I can't save her. Not here, not under these circumstances. I'm fighting an infection while trying to accelerate its production, purging it from her system and speeding up the healing of her tissues. There are too many factors working against me. A single tear slipped down his cheek. He lowered his head to look at Kurenai, focusing all his attention on her for a moment. It's my fault. I killed her, I really did. Slowly, he crawled back, hovering above Kurenai's figure, his crimson eyes meeting Anko's hazel ones. Kure-chan, I didn't know. Sobs could be heard. Kurenai slowly raised a hand to Anko's face, cupping her cheek and smiling weakly. Anko, the decision is yours. I can make this painless for her, or I can keep her close longer. Anko stiffened, looking at them both. She shook her head slowly as tears welled up on her chin. I don't want you to suffer anymore. Okay, Kure-chan? We're going to put you to sleep for a while. Don't worry, we'll still be here when you wake up. A wide smile spread across her face as she looked at her friend. You've always been a bad liar, Anko. Live life to the fullest, okay? Anko nodded furiously to Kurenai, glaring at Naruto. She told her everything she needed to know. Her hands glowed orange for a moment, and Kurenai closed her eyes in response, a small smile still present on her face. I know it's a bad time, Anko, but we have to figure out how to get out of here. She nodded stiffly and bit her lip. First we need water. I'll go get some. Naruto, could you find me if I leave you to burn Kurenai and look for food? I'd stay, but I don't think I can continue after that. Naruto nodded, understanding her situation. You pass. Pass. Those words echoed in her head, endlessly, but she didn't know what was happening. Slowly, she began to wake up, finding herself in a room she'd never seen before, surrounded by people walking in a trance-like state. How did she get there? What had happened? What was going on? Looking around, he recognized everyone present and let out a stifled gasp. The Jonin exams. Some began to collapse, foaming at the mouth, while others seemed to be waking up. Facing the center of the room, Naruto sat there, quietly on the floor, motionless, his eyes closed. Kurenai was hunched over and breathing heavily. She could vividly recall Anko and herself staring at Naruto, their bodies mangled and defeated, her frown turning into a smile, telling them they had made it. But now, trapped in this strange room, was this really where their test lay? Kure-chan, are you all right? The purple girl called after her, a note of concern in her voice. Kurenai looked at her friend in surprise. She seemed to have just woken up. Should you know? Were you with me? The purple-haired girl rubbed the back of her neck shyly, her attractions bouncing. I don't know what's going on. I just remember you pass. The room around them was cleared, leaving Hana, Anko, Kurenai, and Naruto alone. The raven-haired man let out a small grunt and stood up, stretching his body and cracking his stiff neck. That's because you passed all 4 levels, Nachan. Hana-sen passed too, just like Kurenai. Anko was stunned, turning to face the 2 girls who were watching her from a little further away. That exam was a disaster. Discovering they'd only passed 2 stages, while Anko had passed twice, didn't bode well. Kurenai-san, Hana-san, report to the Hokage Tower in 1 hour. You'll be informed about what a promotion entails. Congratulations. I look forward to working with you both. The two bowed. Yes, Naruto-san. And she quickly left the room, seemingly forgetting they were still in their pajamas. The shouts came a few moments later and brought a smile to her face. Nei-chan, you exceeded my expectations, so you have a choice. But first, will you come with me? The clan leaders will want to speak with you. With a slight nod, Naruto looked at her tremblingly and frowned. He took off his cloak, wrapped it around her, and ruffled her hair. Hola, Oni-chan. Ga. The aforementioned clan leaders watched Anko intently, while the Jounin and the Umbu observed the scene, and Yugao, Naruto, Minato, and Tai conversed to one side. The four cleared their throats. This small action silenced any conversation in the room. Naruto took a small step forward, drawing everyone's attention. As I said, you passed all 4 stages of the exam, so your mind is blocked. I'm offering you a unique opportunity to join the Enforcer Force. The sound of a book falling to the floor was followed by the soft hiss of a cigarette. He didn't even need to look around to see Kakashi and Asuma standing there, eyes wide open. What is an executor? She stammered. Having all those important people looking at her made her feel uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Especially MBU Force. They made regular YNBU look like children. No offense to Boar and Lion. They shook their heads slightly. You trained the executioners to be the best, and that's what they became. Naruto nodded slightly, extending his hand to the side, and a delicate gloved hand rested on it. A woman dressed in a black robe appeared out of nowhere, a large scythe strapped to her back, and a white Shinigami mask covering her face. This Anko-san is a Shinigami, leader of the 2nd Executioner Squad. Before I ask you to choose, executioners have a minimum of 5 years before they can leave. One of those years is solely for training. The purple-haired woman nodded and took a small step toward Naruto and the Shinigami. She glanced around, observing the neutral faces, and slowly placed her hand on Naruto's free hand. He nodded slightly and glanced around the room, finally noticing Shinigami. Take her to the barracks. I'll see her off before I leave. Shinigami nodded and placed his hands on Anko's shoulders. Both figures vanished for a moment before disappearing. If you'll excuse me, I promised a little girl I'd teach her a jutsu. He smiled at his father as Minato chuckled. I wouldn't want to keep you. Besides, Nico already gave me some notes about the exam. I completely agree. That Forest was testing them both physically and emotionally. They all deserve the promotions they've received. Naruto's smile widened even more. You do the good job of handing out their vests. Anyway, I guess I'll see them later. I'll make sure to leave tonight. Kakashi and Asuma seemed to be the only ones confused by the conversation. The clan leaders, who already knew their plans, simply nodded and took their leave. Natsumi looked at the scroll in her hands. It was complicated. Seeing her confused expression, Naruto chuckled. It's a high-level jutsu for a reason, Natsumi-chan. The blonde looked at Naruto. He could see the expression she was trying to hide. Why do you have to leave? I just found out about you. We barely started spending time together, and now you're leaving? It's not fair. Her little speech was interrupted when 2 fingers touched the center of her forehead. Naruto's smile was aligned with hers. The world we live in isn't fair. It was my decision to take this training journey. This way, I could get closer to perfecting one of my abilities and protect those I care about when things get unfair. So don't frown, rejoice. Even though I may seem sad now, I'll be back in a few months. Besides, I prepared this. He spoke, taking a scroll from one of his pockets and holding it in his hands with the other. What's wrong? Asked the blonde, blue-eyed boy, looking at the Uchiha as he stood up again to his full height. It's in case I don't get back in time, a shadow of me. It can see your graduation with your parents, and I'll see it all as if I were there when it fades away. So, no matter what happens, I expect a picture and a hug when you graduate, okay? Natsumi sobbed a little before looking Naruto in the eyes, nodding firmly and giving a thumbs up. Hello, Oni-chan. He ruffled her hair a little and started walking away towards the door. Oh, Kurenai was promoted today. You should go see her sometime. Her voice was clearly heard down the hall, her hand resting on the doorknob as she prepared to leave. What's wrong with Anko-chan? She's a special case. You'll have to talk to Dad about that, okay? Hello, Oniai-chan. He turned his head and looked at Natsumi over his shoulder with a proud smile on his face. Hey, kid, study hard, live life to the fullest, and be good to your parents while I'm gone, okay? He saw her nod vigorously as she opened the door. The gentle breeze outside whipped her hair in all directions. Oddly, it never covered her right eye, which meant it was always in Natsumi's view. See you soon. The sound of the door closing was quite difficult for Natsumi to bear. She had discovered her brother a few months ago, and since then she had been seeing him at least twice a week, trying to get to know him better. However, now he would be gone for months. Looking at the first scroll he had given her, she narrowed her eyes. I'll master it by the time you get back, Oniai-chan, she declared. Naruto, who could still hear her, broke into a wide smile. I'm sure you will, Natsumi-chan. Anko gasped for breath, staring at the two standing before her. How come this doesn't affect you? Naruto turned away, raising an eyebrow, while Shinigami simply looked at her. It's simple, Anko. We've gotten used to living in increased gravity, which means that when we go outside, we can move even faster. For the next month, you won't be able to leave the barracks. During this time, your body will fully adapt to the gravity, and your muscles will become much denser than before. And no, before you ask, this won't make you look manly or scare the boys. Anko could barely move her head to reply. The slight nod she gave almost left her exhausted. Now, do you want to regain your memory of what happened during the Genjutsu? I warn you, you might hate me after you get it back. Anko's eyes widened at those words, seeing the sadness on Naruto's face. I couldn't hate you, Naruto, but I'd like to know what happened. Naruto stepped forward and pressed his hand against her head. A small green pulse shot from his hand and traveled through Anko's body, removing the block. Her eyes opened before narrowing again, a single tear sliding down her right cheek. Closing them for a few seconds, she calmed her breathing. It's definitely hard to accept. I'm a little angry, but I don't hate you. It was a Genjutsu, and I see it affected you too. My only question is, why? Naruto cleared his throat. He was about to speak when the Shinigami's gloved hand gently struck his chest. He pointed to his wrist, letting him know his time was running out. I have to go, Anko-chan. Take care while I'm gone, okay? Also, Shinigami will show you how everything works and explain what I was going to do. As if summoned, Tai Long appeared beside Naruto, engulfing them both in black flames, leaving no trace of his presence. What Naruto-sama was going to say was that, as an executioner, you must be able to continue the mission even if your comrades die. We're not trying to turn you against them or tell you not to care, but we know that death simply happens, sometimes on our side, sometimes on the enemy's. Now, little Anko-chan, I'll take you to your room. You'll rest there tonight. In the morning, we'll start with light exercises to get you used to the change in gravity. The purple-haired girl didn't even have time to reply before the girl, smaller than her, hoisted her onto her hooded shoulder, completely unfazed by Anko's weight. Naruto and Tai Long were walking at a slow pace through the dimly lit streets. He had already signed to leave the village. He could see the large gates in front of him, marking the end of the village. A figure leaned from the gates, walking slowly towards the center of them. Naruto paused, opening his red eyes and looking at the figure. I thought you'd be celebrating. The figure's dark hair was dimly illuminated as it advanced, swaying its hips and running its hands along its sides, smoothing its clothing. I heard you were leaving. I wanted to say goodbye. Naruto nodded and looked at the large tiger beside him, getting the message. Tai disappeared. He walked slowly toward the figure, enjoying the calm of the night. You did well today, Kurenai. Keep it up, and that Genin team will be yours in no time. Moving forward again, she slowly hugged him around the chest, her chin resting on his head and her arms around his shoulders. Naruto. The hesitation was evident in his voice. HNN. Her ear was pressed against her chest. She heard the sound resonate through her body, and a small smile appeared on her face. See, can we stay like this for a little while? Just a moment, I'll have to go soon. Her body stiffened, and her arms gripped her tighter. Do you have to do it? It was the same question Natsumi asked. Only why did it seem so much harder to answer? Hello, I need to get stronger. He felt her grip tighten even more, regretting not wearing armor. His black robes offered no protection from her almost tenacious hold. No, you're already strong. Stay here, where we need you, where I need you. Her voice was filled with emotion. Kurenai. Her voice was calm, as always, something she could thank her mother for, since she had heard that it was a trait of the Uchiha. She was interrupted. His hand moved from her shoulders to the side of her face. He leaned in and pulled her towards him, capturing her lips. He himself was surprised by what he had just done. Acting on his feelings was not something he was used to. Kurenai was speechless, the sensation of his dry lips against hers, her eyes closing as she leaned in for the kiss, not wanting it to end. Sadly, it couldn't. Naruto pulled away and frowned, confusing her. Sorry for acting impulsively. A wide smile spread across her face as she leaned back against his chest and hugged him tightly. I think you should do it more often, Naruto-kun. He could feel her snuggling into his robes. It was strange how something like that could warm him so much. Since when do I deserve a kun added to my name? He stared at her, noticing the blush on her cheeks, almost as intense as her eyes. From now on, I suppose I shouldn't keep you any longer. Just remember, I'm here waiting, so you'd better get back safe and sound, okay? She let go of him and took a step back, looking at his face, marveling at his appearance. Thank you, Kurenai-chan. I'll be back soon. I suppose this is a goodbye, isn't it? It's not goodbye. That doesn't mean we'll never see each other again. It's more like see you later. She had to stifle a giggle at his reasoning, watching him slowly walk away into the night. See you later, Naruto-kun, she whispered to herself, caressing with her fingers the lips he had claimed. I'll get stronger too while you're gone. Years. Naruto lowered his gaze to the figure before him, a slight smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Get up, weasel, this is no time to rest. His voice, harsh and sharp, betrayed no remorse. It was the voice of Oni, leader of the executioners and Itachi's veteran comrade. Why yes, Oni Taishu, the black-haired boy emerged, struggling to his feet, wobbly as he tried to stay upright. In case you haven't noticed, the executioner's headquarters has a much denser gravity than the rest of the village. This is where the next step of your training will begin, weasel. The boy nodded, and Naruto moved forward, grabbing him by his clothes and pulling him along the corridors. You were taking too long. I don't want you to waste my time, weasel. Hi Oni Taishu. His voice sounded dry and broken as the armor he wore on his back dragged him along. His body was thrown onto a bed where Oni began to tear off his tattered robes, letting them fall to the floor. His mask lay to one side, revealing his red eyes, staring intently at the young Uchiha. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto closed the door behind them, locking it. Can you imagine my surprise when I was told my subordinate would be Uchiha Itachi? I can't, Oni Taishu, the boy shouted, trying to be as rigid as possible. That's enough, Itachi. When we're behind closed doors, you'll call me Naruto. Understood? Yes, Naruto Taishu. Madara's grandson shook his head. This kid would cause him a lot of pain. The months passed quickly for young Itachi. While Naruto was right that the boy had become a real pain, Naruto made sure the boy's body suffered as well. He didn't hold back much, and certainly put him through a rigorous test, constantly repeating the same movements over and over. Itachi stood there with a standard katana, his signature weapon, a bit bland, but it suited him well. Naruto, on the other hand, wielded a sword almost as long as he was tall. Sakura no Surace, cherry cutter, gets its name from its smithy. Rumor has it that it's a sword capable of cutting through anything. This began when a leaf from the sakura tree fell on its blade, splitting it in half, hence its name. Naruto spoke with a hint of pride in his voice, holding his sword, whose metal had a slight red and pink tint. Itachi shifted his stance, raising his katana in front of him defensively. Move your attack, weasel. Don't let the Oni chase its prey. Itachi swallowed hard, suppressing the nervousness he'd been holding back, and lunged forward, thrusting his sword forward and unleashing a small wind scythe, a hand jutsu Naruto had taught him. Yes, he taught, not by letting Itachi simply copy the jutsu, but by having the boy work for each of them, teaching him to appreciate the art. Naruto lifted Sakura and moved her forward, slicing the scythe in two, shattering the ground on either side, his gaze fixed on Itachi. He knew the boy had the Sharingan activated, which meant the fight would be interesting. Naruto shifted his stance, bringing his left leg back and pulling Sakura along his body, gripping her hilt tightly before swinging it in a wide arc. Katan, wall of crawling flames. That, as its name indicated, Naruto's jutsu was a large wall of flames that moved slowly across the sand, scorching the ground beneath its feet. The wall of flames slammed into the other side of the arena, dissipating against the wall. Naruto glanced around for a moment, squinting at a patch of ground. That wasn't hot enough to leave a body, Weasel. Itachi's tattered cloak slowly emerged from the ground, covering his ANBU armor. His weasel mask remained firmly in place. Fighting someone who has complete control over your natural element. I don't think you've ever been in my position, Oni Taishu. Naruto smirked beneath his mask and brandished Sakura, launching a chain of lightning bolts from the end, acting like a whip, digging a deep trench in the ground. Itachi gasped at what he saw. A whip of lightning, extending from a sword wielding a wind blade. Was your control at this level? Naruto smirked beneath his mask, attacking with Sakuraidaki's sword burst into flames, shattering the ground. His Sharingan, capable of seeing the wind blade, allowed him to dodge it, though not by much. The speed at which he launched it was completely different from what Naruto had used before. Weasel, you're getting slower, kid. Move your feet. The man in the Oni mask sneered, his robes flickering with his movements, occasionally revealing the bulky armor beneath. You could see the metal clanging against itself, but Naruto didn't make a sound. The silencing seals took care of that. Itachi's eyes quickly scanned Naruto's sword, its attack range and the speed with which he swung it. As he began to send it crashing to the ground again, the younger Uchiha tightened his grip, running along the lightning whip, his fire sword blocking it from numbing his body. Naruto narrowed his eyes at what Itachi was trying to do. When the boy was close enough, Naruto spun around, lashing out with a swift whip at Itachi, disorienting him. We have the same eyes, kid. A plan like that would never work. He heard Itachi chuckle, watching the boy clutching the wire tightly. Scanning it, he saw it ended at his feet. Naruto snorted quickly and unleashed a burst of energy from his body, demonstrating extreme chakra control. Blue-white lightning whipped around the wire, knocking the poor boy to the ground. Good job, kid. Clean yourself up and get some rest. We have a mission tomorrow. He received a growl from the Uchiha, who was lying face down, which made him chuckle. I don't think I heard you correctly, Weasel. Hi, Oni Taishu. His hoarse voice threatened to break from the tension. Naruto wore samurai pants and he pulled Sakura down tightly as the snow fell around them. The snow swirled into the air, blocking his vision. His red eyes couldn't see through the dust cloud. Instinctively, he lifted Sakura to her feet that he deflected a blow to his right, raising his leg and kneeing a man in the stomach. He spun around and ducked, dodging the blow aimed at his head. Striking the man's chest with the tip of his sword, his right foot skidded across the ground, kicking up more snow. Holding his sword behind his back to block another attack, he shifted his stance and slid to the left, delivering a powerful blow with his right leg, bending over his assailant. Closing his eyes, he exhaled with difficulty, unable to see the mist his breath created. He had spent the last 6 months training in Kenjutsu. His master was ruthless, willing to kill you if you stood in his way. That was life there, a place where he could thrive. Currently, he was facing a 4-man squad, personally selected by the lord of the area. This session had left him wanting more. They had proven to be a minor challenge. He needed bigger prey. He needed to become the predator he once was. His trainer had even remarked that he had weakened. The men around him began to move again. Naruto, no longer caring for his health, delivered 4 swift slashes, knocking the group to the ground. He watched as his wounds stained the once white landscape. Applause erupted to his right, and his trainer appeared. You're almost ready, but I must ask you, why did you kill them? Miyamoto Musashi, Naruto's legendary trainer, wore a metal eye patch over his left eye and small bells in his hair. He was dressed in white samurai-style clothing and had 2 swords firmly attached to his left hip. They couldn't even force me to use my left hand. You surely would have killed them yourself. The only thing that changed was the sword that annihilated them. Naruto sheathed his sword, Sakura on her hip. The sound of it falling into place was almost like music to her ears. Is your sword still sound? It was the same question Musashi always asked him. Without even thinking, he gave his usual answer. The only bad thing is his thirst for battle. As always, his master smiled smugly, positioning himself behind Naruto and placing a hand on his back. I think we're done. I really have nothing left to teach you, Naruto. The only way you'll improve is to rediscover what you once were and practiced. Sakura should already feel like an extension of your arm. What you need is for your body to fully accept it. Confused, Naruto raised an eyebrow and looked at his master. He was smiling, whirling his swords around his arms, shifting stances with unimaginable speed. His body moved in time with the blades, and the sharp metal drew closer to the man in an unimaginable way. When you reach this level with Sakura, you'll be ready to face me in combat. I don't want to kill such a promising student too soon. Naruto nodded at his master's explanation, awaiting the order to move again. Once received, the pair moved quickly through the snow, arriving at the Lord's mansion in minutes. Pack your things, Naruto, you're leaving tonight. Hello, master. I wouldn't want to bother you more than necessary. Naruto bowed deeply and headed to his guest room. His black samurai pants were soaked at the bottom, leaving an icy chill on his feet. If it weren't for Kurama, his feet would probably be frozen. Fighting barefoot in the snow had been part of his training, and he wasn't too surprised to discover that it always snowed in the land of iron. With his bags packed, Naruto, dressed in a black hooded robe and Sakura leaning on his shoulder, she walked through the house. Musashi saw her off at the door. If you ever tire of this shinobi stuff, you can always come and fight for me. The wide smile on the man's face was almost unbearable. I'll remember it, though I'm needed here right now. So, for the time being, I'll have to respectfully decline your offer, Musashi-sama. Naruto gave a small bow to the legendary samurai, who nodded. Don't forget to say hi to that pretty girl of yours for me. He winked mischievously at Naruto before kicking him out and closing the door. The teasing was something new to him. It had started 2 months into his training, with Kurenai and her team, Sasuke, Natsumi, and Sakura. He found it curious that the girl had the same name as his sword. Musashi thought so too, saying it was a sign that one day he would be mortal. Naruto laughed, saying that the blonde was the one to watch out for. After discovering that she was Naruto's little sister, he had no choice but to accept it. He had received the memories from the shadow clone and even written a note to Natsumi, in addition to sending her a special set of kunai as a graduation gift. He felt it would be strange to return to Konoha and see them all after so long. He'd received an abusive letter from Anko 2 months ago, cursing himself for getting her on the show. Well, those were the opening lines, of course. Naruto now had some new insults he could use. The rest went on about how she was making friends and how much fun she was having. He felt a little saddened when he learned that Iruka had broken up with her, saying he couldn't stand the hours she worked. The man needed to mature. He was a shinobi. His work schedule was always changing. Not every